You're listening to the Limitless Leadership Podcast, the podcast designed to help automotive repair shops learn how to lead, coach, train, and manage their team better by sharing proven techniques and thought-provoking interviews from industry leaders. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's today's episode.
All right, leaders, whether you're running a shop, leading a team, or leveling up in your career, you know details matter. And if you're like me, that includes keeping your beard on point. That's why I trust the Bearded Brotherhood. Their beard oils, beard balms, and mustache waxes, among other, are made with all natural ingredients, no junk, no shortcuts, just top-tier quality that keeps my beard looking sharp and feeling great. And let's talk scents. Whether it's their best-selling Woodsman or my personal favorite, Lone Stranger, the Bearded Brotherhood keeps me smelling fresh and my beard stays soft all day. If you take your beard game seriously, this is the stuff that you need. And because you're part of the Limitless Leadership podcast family, I've got a deal for you. Just visit thebeardedbrotherhood.co/lead15 to grab your favorite products and get 15% off in the process, because a great leader deserves a great beard. Now, back to today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Limitless Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Parnell, and today we have another fantastic guest with us today. Our guest today is the founder of 1% Better. He is the head of sales development at Tekmetric. He's also a published author of a fantastic book. If you're listening to this episode, watch this episode on YouTube because I'm holding his book up right now called 1% Better. Our guest today is Chuck Connors. Chuck, thanks for being here, man.
Josh, what an intro. Thanks, man. Pleasure being here.
Hey, man, I'm excited that you're here. You have an incredible story, a story that not many people have ever gone through, things that you've gone through and subsequently grown through. So I'm excited for them to hear your story. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Who's Chuck Connors? What do you do? How do you do it? The floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you. So yes, Chuck Connors. I have been in sales development now for a little over a decade. Started as an individual contributor and gradually went towards the leadership path where I found my passion with coaching, mentoring, enabling, and really building sales development teams. And it's always been in the software space. That's really where my sweet spot has been. And with that, it's really always been a focus on driving top of the funnel opportunities for the businesses that I've worked for. So I'm now at Tekmetric, been here the last couple of years. And with that time, it's really been a beautiful opportunity just as a business, but also as an SDR department, seeing our company grow really significantly over the last couple of years in hyper growth, and also being able to put my stamp on the business as well with the great talent that we've brought in for sales development. Outside of work, I am a father, husband, brother, friend, and really just enjoy my time with the people that are around me. Other piece of that, I would say, is now 1% better, which if you would have asked me a year ago, what 1% better was, I would have no answer for you. The only answer from a brand perspective, my answer probably would have been get better a little bit each day in all different areas of your life. But now going through what I went through this past fall, it is a brand to me, and I can explain on that story too, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, I mean, I know that's a massive part of your story, an incredibly impactful moment happened to you last year. So go ahead and share with the audience what you went through and now what your perspective of 1% Better is, having gone through it.
Yeah. So I started a work day just like any other work day in September 3rd to be exact. And I started getting a really nasty headache. And within an hour, I was unable to speak, really use my motor skills. And luckily my wife was home at the time, and she is a neuro ICU nurse. So she's been saving lives for a long time at this point, just in that space. And she started doing some neurological tests on me, pulling my arms, saying, follow my fingers, speak, which I couldn't do. noticed pretty immediately that there was something wrong. So I was taken to the hospital. They did some scans on me and realized that there was something on my brain. And anytime you get delivered that news, you kind of freak out. So
Sure.
I didn't take it very well. And in that moment, it wasn't, man, my life is ending. It was more of, man, there's so many things that I haven't done yet that I want to do.
Mm.
And that hit me really hard, especially with being a father of a almost 2-year-old now. She was about one, a little over one at that point. So there was a lot of things that I just wanted to continue to do. Shortly after I had that revelation in my head, I went into a massive seizure and woke up 2.5 days later in another hospital, the one where my wife actually works, ironically, on her floor. So her friends, doctors were all taking care of me for the time that I was in there. And we had closure and clarity at that point what was wrong with me. And what it was a cavernous malformation. And for the 98, probably 99% of people that don't know what a cavernous malformation is, which I had no idea is, it's a cluster of blood vessels that are in your brain that never fully form. I would say like kind of like a little cousin to an aneurysm.
Mm.
And what happened was it bled a little bit. And that's what caused my massive headaches that I was going through that day, and also the seizure. So, emergency surgery, not that day, but I had to spend time in the hospital for the week to kind of recover a little bit and let my body settle. Went through surgery. Surgery went great, which was a massive blessing because a little left, a little right, my future could have been much different and not sitting on this podcast with you right now. Got out of the hospital, had about a month or so of just reflection and sitting around, couldn't pick up my daughter, couldn't work, couldn't exercise, drive, you name it, I couldn't do it. The only thing I could pretty much do was just sit around. And at first that was a pain for me because I'm always on the move, always doing something, and staying still was a burden. But I found a way to make it work for me by opening a Google Doc, and I started writing, just pouring my emotions out. First telling my story and then how I'm feeling that day and what was going through my head, but also thinking about, man, I've had this decade plus of experience in sales development for software teams and building and scaling them and helping people get to the next level of their careers that they didn't really dream of until a good opportunity came across. And I said, let's put this on paper. And I really did not have the plans of writing a book at that time. It was just, let's just write it all out and see what happens. So started writing. Before I knew it, I was at 45,000 words in this Word document. And it was pretty crazy because I never hit writer's block for 1 second post brain surgery with staples in my head and everything. But I think the thing that a lot of people don't have is the time to just do nothing for a while. And that was one of the first times that I had an opportunity to do nothing and just solely focus on one task for I would say having longevity to do one task. And that's when my wife and I had the discussion of let's maybe put a book out with this, and was able to make the edits and everything. And that's where 1% Better, the book came. And then I piggybacked on that with a podcast, and yeah, just kind of letting it flourish and expand as time goes on. But pretty amazing that we're a little over 6 months or just about 6 months since then, and all of this has happened. So, but been back to work now. I returned back to work about a month or so after my surgery. Was very happy to be back since I'm extremely passionate about leadership and sales development, and also just Tekmetric as a whole. It's a great company. So yeah, that's what brought me to this point.
Love it. Chuck, man, first I'll say this, kudos to you for hitting the ground running after surgery, after thankfully a successful surgery. Yeah. The fact that you didn't have an intention of writing a book, I would assume you didn't have an intention of starting a podcast. All these things in your life are happening for a reason. And I've got to believe, as a faith-based person, I've got to believe that God has big plans for you. And it's not just for you to check off the things of your bucket list that you talked about. Like the fact that you were like, hey, I wasn't thinking about my life being over. I was thinking about there's so many things that I want to do that I haven't done yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you later on in this episode. I'm gonna ask you to share what are some things at the top of that list that you're looking forward to doing this year. But and I will say this too, as a published author myself, I'm actually jealous of the fact that you did not experience writer's block, because that is a real thing, and man,
Yeah.
it's not easy. But I'll say this: I love the fact that you are taking the cards that were dealt and you are making the most of them. For so many of us, we will experience some really tough, challenging obstacles, and it allow us to get below the line. But you're saying, you know what? I was below the line. I'm going to pick myself right back up, and I'm going to just take this and run with it. And you ran with it, an incredible journey in just a short amount of time. I'll ask you now, your perspective of 1% better. What it was prior to your experience was, just being better one day at a time. Now, if I'm going to ask you to go a little deeper and say, what does 1% better truly mean to you? What would you say to that?
Yeah, great question. So before brain surgery, 1% better was anything that you're doing, just do it a little bit better the next day. For me, post brain surgery, I have a different perspective on it, more of health is a non-negotiable. So it just goes much deeper. So first thing is health is a non-negotiable. It's the foundation for everything. Without it, you really can't do anything. You are nothing without your health. Like, we are not sitting here, you and I right now, without our health. So it really enforced the importance of rest, nutrition, diet, overall, and just the recovery process of your body, and really taking care of it. I would say the other piece of that would be time is a gift. It really is. Like, 1 second you can have it, 1 second you can't. So having that 1% better mindset of just like 1 second you have time, the next you don't. So I became really hyper aware of how precious time is and what it does for you. Being in the moment with things, active listening, and really being present. And being present is the other side of just being 1% better. It's being still. As I mentioned, I had that time of not being able to do anything, where I've always been constantly on the move. So having this time to reflect and just be still, be present, be mindful. It was the summertime, or end of summer up here in the Northeast. So I had the opportunity to sit outside and just stare at trees, leaves, birds, squirrels. And I know this sounds so cliche and there's probably people laughing, but those little things of just awareness were really super important, and helping me let go of unnecessary stress and focus on what really matters most. And then the next thing of just being 1% better, and what is encompassed in that is the control what you can. There's so many things that we talk about and we think about that is completely out of our control. And I still battle with this, but I am more aware of it than I was before. So how is my attitude? How am I bringing it to a call? How am I how am I working with the people around me, and how is their experience when they are on a call with me or in a meeting or whatever the case may be, and what habits am I building, and the overall perspective of people. So that's how I would answer that.
There's so many things in your book after reading it. I'm like, man, Chuck and I are cut from the same cloth. Like there are things I absolutely love to read. The fact that you're talking about being still. I mean, if you can see this, Chuck, I have a tattoo on my hand that says,
"Oh, how about
still."
that?
And the reason for that is because I'm very similar, where I just feel like I'm always on the go. There's always things I'm doing, and I almost feel like if I'm not doing something, I'm not productive, or I'm, and it starts giving me anxiety. And so when I look at my watch to see what time it is, this is my reminder to say, hey, Josh, like, it's okay to just be still. Like, sometimes the best action we can take is no action. Yeah. And so just be still. So I love hearing that. I also really appreciate the fact that you mentioned in your book the power and the impact of journaling. And what you do right now, a common practice for you is to journal before bed every night. And it's even something that I encourage clients to do. And I've seen the impact in my own life of what journaling can mean when you're trying to gain clarity and direction for things that you're not really sure of. And what I know is that humans have up to 60,000 thoughts in their mind. And studies show that 80% of their thoughts are negative and 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. So we're trying to figure out life on the fly with 60,000 other thoughts. But journaling for me is very much like a math equation, where if I'm going to try to find, discover the answer of a lengthy math equation, 594 times 367, I can't do that in my head. But if I start putting pen to paper, I can eventually work things out and eventually get my answer. And journaling is very much like that. We're trying to figure out these crazy equations, crazy life challenges in our head. If we start putting pen to paper, the amount of clarity and direction that we can receive is unbelievable, and it's definitely a great practice to do.
Yeah, it's massive, and it's been a game changer for myself. And I'd say I would do it very inconsistently in the past, and I've made I signed a contract with myself of making sure that I do that every single day post surgery, and really it just encompasses a few things. What am I grateful for? What are some things that I'm looking forward to, as simple as they could be, and then affirmations that I want to keep close to myself. And I think a big one that I try to repeat a lot is I am happy with my progress, no matter how small it is each day. And that kind of ties back to the 1% better mentality of we're so caught up in this world of instant gratification, where everybody wants the answers immediately, whether it's a text message or a phone call or a Slack message back to you, anything. There's no patience. And patience is something that I think everybody needs, not just for things to be prolonged with results, but from a standpoint of being able to reflect and think about what you're doing. So when you brought up journaling, and what that has done for me too, is it's allowed me to get all the thoughts out of my head that stay up there and just collect. Like you said, there's so many things that go through your head on a daily basis, let alone a weekly, monthly. And if you're not doing anything to get that out of your head, it's just clustering things up. And it's been truly helpful for me to get that stuff out. I think I've become a better father, a better husband, mentor, leader in work, all these types of things, because I have space to be more creative and curious about things.
Love that. And you're protecting your space. And that's the most important thing. When you're protecting your space, you're setting boundaries, and more importantly, keeping boundaries. So you're able to spend time with your wife and your daughter. Let's talk about the time that you do now have. You have a second chance of life, essentially, Chuck. So let's talk about, now that you have this new lease on life, if you will, what are some of the things at the top of your bucket list that you're going to be striving for or looking forward to doing this year?
Yeah, this first one's cliche, but it's continuing to just improve my health in any way, shape, or form. I like to look at myself as a student of the game and the game of life, meaning like I'm always trying to just get better. I'm addicted to learning about anything. Like I am the classic put on YouTube on a topic and go 2, 3 weeks and just absolutely devour that topic and learn about it. I'll give you an example. Gardening. I did it a few years back and I don't even know if I knew how to spell gardening. And it became such a great hobby of mine that I've become passionate about, and all the things I was previously talking about. But that time of being able to learn, I also think this, as you said, that second lease on, or this lease on life, is being present in the moments that I have with people. Whether that's family, friends, work, coworkers. So for example, if I'm on a call, you have my full attention. There's no answering Slack messages and getting back to people and things like that if we're on a call. Like I will answer that after we're over, when we're engaging with one another, full attention. So I think that is a big thing that I'm just continuing to grow as this year goes on. How can I be more present with anything that I'm doing and being in the moment with that? Also just continuing to grow our sales development department at Tekmetric and grow Tekmetric as a whole. It's a beautiful company, and not a lot of people get to experience the hyper growth of a company. And it comes with, as much as people say, oh, I would love to be in your position and things like that, it still has its challenges. Like it goes back to that quote, choose your hard. It could be hard for you to be a part of a crappy company. It could be hard for you to be a part of a great company. Choose your heart. So I like my heart. It's enjoyable. It's fulfilling. outside of that, it would just be continuing to grow the 1% better brand. With that, I don't have a full vision of what that is just yet, but a book has come from it, podcast, and great conversations with people, and that is something that I don't want to take for granted, of having these conversations with people that I probably wouldn't have in the past. So taking it a little day by day, but at the same time trying to plan things as well.
Chuck, having this conversation with you, I see why you are a great asset at Tekmetric. Knowing a lot of the folks at Tekmetric the way that I do, what you guys are great at is creating this entire customer experience as a relationship first, and the transaction is a byproduct of this exceptional standard setting customer service, if you will. And, even going back to how you're saying you're growing your SDRs, your sales development representatives, and you're talking about how important it is to make sure that we are giving our customers our undivided attention. I'd imagine that you're coaching and leading your team that same way, where you're encouraging and reminding, like, look, this is a relationship first. Yeah. It's essentially a slow game. I mean, where, and I shouldn't even call it a game, because I don't want to make it sound like anyone is winning or losing, but we're both going to win at the end of this if we are treating this as a relationship, because ultimately you're serving your customers, and you're giving them what they not only want, but what they need through this relationship. Yeah,
I totally agree with you, Josh. And I think there's a few things that go into that. One, I look at sales development a little bit differently than the traditional definition of it. The traditional definition is prospecting, cold calling, cold emailing, managing your CRM, all the data in there. And that's all very still true. But for me, the definition of sales development is developing these individuals to be better versions of themselves for the future of the business, for the future of themselves. And that's where a lot of the topics in the book have come from, is what have I done over the years with reps that have worked with me and then eventually were promoted into a new role. And they're the best case studies or stories that I could ever tell, that are better than any paycheck or anything whatsoever, is seeing someone that was started with a fraction of the skills that they have now, and then they put themselves in position to get promoted into a new department and be a future leader of the business and a bigger asset. I kind of look at ourselves as the farm team for a baseball organization. Yeah. And those players are eventually going to go up to the big leagues. And I look at myself as a college basketball coach, football coach, to where your top talent goes to the big leagues. And you want that. It's the best reward as a leader that you can receive. But a big thing for me is just serving others and leading by example. I think that is said a lot, but just being obsessed with growth. I'm absolutely obsessed with seeing people get better at things that they struggled with in the past, and being a part of that journey. And also the last part I would say with that is reminding them, like, if let's just say you were an SDR on the team, hey Josh, how much better do you feel now than when you started? And the response a lot of the time is like, oh my God, there's so many things that, like, I wouldn't even imagine that I'm doing now, or skills that I've built. And that's really cool, because a lot of the time we forget to look back on the journey that we've been on. And I think that's important, so people don't burn out too, is to look at your growth over time, because we're so caught up in the moment.
That's a phenomenal perspective shift to give anyone on your team. And what you just described is a testament to your leadership too, because there's so many shop owners, there's so many business owners in general who get frustrated when a quality team member leaves their team for a better opportunity. And the reminder that I try to provide everyone is that, look, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because if you're doing your job as a leader, you're growing and developing and investing in your team members so that they can go and do bigger and better things. And as a sports guy myself, I'll talk about Nick Saban, former Alabama legend. And you can't say that on this podcast. You see the LSU stuff behind me. I'm gonna talk about him, but it's almost blasphemy for me to say this. So, but no, in all seriousness, Chuck, if you're watching, Chuck just zipped his lips and then he threw it out the window. All right, so here's the thing with Nick Saban. What he says though is, you're not, when a player leaves, like when a player leaves, if they graduate, if they go to the next level, we're not having to rebuild. We're simply having to reload,
Mm,
because you're constantly putting in the work and you're investing in all of the players, not just the starting players, the starting quarterback, the starting cornerbacks. You're investing in all of your team members. And
totally.
so that again is a testament to your leadership. The fact that you are growing and developing them so that they can go and do bigger and better things is a trait I wish every leader was able to recognize and possess. So
Thank you.
I'll ask you, Chuck, straight up, what does leadership mean to you?
Mm, I'm pausing for a sec because I look at leadership, it's not just a definition for me. It encompasses so many things, but I do think true leadership comes down to challenging people to grow while you're still supporting them.
Mm.
So I want you to be the best version of yourself. And if I don't think that you are trying to be the best version of yourself, I'm going to call you out on it. And I expect you to do the same to me. Um, I also look at it as leadership is I'm your flag carrier. Like I am your number one fan. When you're not in the room with us or whoever I'm with, I'm screaming from the mountaintops of your praise of how great you are if you are being that great. So I think that's really important, and also equipping them to handle adversity or or adaptability, because every day is going to throw you new challenges. Let's take my example with brain surgery. I had no idea that was coming. I was golfing the day before with my buddies. I woke up that morning, had my breakfast, exercised, did everything that I normally do. Did not see that coming. So I think it's as us as leaders, it's really imperative for us to prepare them to get punched in the face day in and day out and get used to it, because there's nothing wrong with getting hit with challenges. As I mentioned earlier, choose your heart. You're going to have hard situations nonstop. And then I would say the other piece of what leadership means to me is being a student, um, and empowering people to have this student mindset of being inquisitive and curious and trying to constantly learn new things, no matter how micro or macro it is for your brain. It's so important to just keep that muscle going and working on things continuously, because it empowers you it gives you momentum. Just because you can't see momentum, it's really important to keep that momentum with anything that you're doing. Um, and then I would say from my side, it's leadership is how I show up. It's the energy that I bring. It is the passion, the intention behind the whys that I'm putting out there. All that stuff is a part of leadership for me. So, like when you asked me that question, I had a bubble in my head, and then boop, 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 all these like little things of thinking
Sure.
what leadership is. So that's how I look at it.
Love it. Yeah. When the why is clear, the how is easy. You talk
Mm,
about staying curious in your book, and how what we know is that when we're staying curious, we're in learning mode. And if we're in learning mode, that means we're in growth mode.
yeah.
You also talk about persistence and discipline being the path to mastery. Can you expand on that and what that means? Persistence and discipline being the path to mastery.
Yeah. We're in a world right now where motivation is everywhere, meaning you can hop on your phone, you could go on any social media channel, and there's going to be a 15-second, 30-second clip that gets you super motivated and jacked up.
Mhm.
But I mean, people have said it in the past, but I think motivation is extremely cheap. It's easy to get. It's very short term, and it's not going to produce results over the long time or the long term. So with discipline and persistence, discipline is setting yourself up with the right routine, making sure that you're repetitive with it, where the persistence comes in, because the other piece that I mentioned, there is instant gratification everywhere to get the answers, or the promotion, if you keep job hopping, all these things really quickly. Whereas with being persistent, a lot of the time you're going to get what you want as long as you continue to just push on that path, and reinforcing that with discipline, making sure that you're doing the right things every day. even if you don't get the exact result that you're looking for, is going to increase your odds when people say, oh, you're so lucky that this happened. Oh, you're so lucky that this occurred and things like that. That's from all the sweat hours that people haven't seen before and all the work that you put in, whether it's reading a book, watching a video, putting the time in at the gym, putting the time in with your family and building those relationships, putting the time in with your team, the people that you work with. That's where that quote unquote luck comes from. So I'm a huge advocate of being persistent in anything that you're looking for, is continuing to push forward no matter what the circumstances are, and having the discipline to do that, because it's very easy to fall off the horse.
Yeah, 100%. Motivation is very much like a flame, and flames come and go. So where's your flame going to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now? So you also just described what you mentioned in your book. In chapter 5, you mentioned that progress is rarely linear. And you might have kind of already started to answer this question that I'm about to ask, because you mentioned how earlier about momentum, and how there's almost like this non-visible progress that's being made because you're putting in the work. Can you explain what you mean when you say progress is rarely linear?
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you caught that. Progress is rarely linear because you're going to, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to get punched in the face. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to get hit with curveballs that you were not expecting. And where a lot of people think is, I choose to do something. Let's just say I choose to do X and I'm going to end at Y without any X1, X2, X3 scenarios. All these scenarios happen in between. And for people that are seeing this on video, I'd like to look at six or growth, or however we want to say it, is you go up, you go down, you go up, you go sideways, you go back, because you're trying things, you're trial and error, you're seeing what works, what doesn't work, and improving from that. But if you zoom out, that's what people don't do. When you zoom out, it's just like, whoa, I did all this squiggly line stuff. But if I zoom out, I see that I've been going up and to the right the entire time. But that's the thing. We get so caught up in the day to day of getting punched in the face today. But what about that win I had last week? What about that win I had yesterday?
Love that.
These are things that people forget about. So it isn't linear, but it's a perspective that you just have to have on it.
Love that, Chuck. So again, you and I are basically the same person. So I use a very similar
You
graph.
just have much better facial hair than I do. I'm very patchy. Yeah.
Hey, if you're very, very patchy, check out the Shaggy Dog beard oil from the Bearded Brotherhood. So, that's a podcast sponsor of ours. So, yeah. So what you just described, though, is an actual graph that I share even in my presentation sometimes. So again, you and I are very much on the same page as it comes to progress and consistency and motivation and discipline and so forth and so on. Here's a question I love to ask every guest on my show, and that is, what is the best advice you've ever received from a mentor or a coach?
I got this nugget unexpectedly. It was be inquisitive, constantly be inquisitive. And I didn't even know what that word meant at the time. I had to look it up. I was very young. Well, not very young, but I was younger than I am now. And it ended up being one of the best lessons or things that I was told. Be inquisitive about anything that you're doing, be curious, creative, and really just trying to dig deeper on anything that you're doing and have depth to it. So I would say that is the first really good lesson that I've had. The other one I would say is being okay with saying, I don't know. I don't know this answer. Even as leaders, we're put on this level of, you need to know all the answers. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that. But I'm very transparent now because of getting that lesson of saying, I don't know, help me with that. Because it shows that vulnerability in yourself, that you are just like anybody else when you are a leader. Because if you think about just the people on the other side of when you are coaching them, mentoring them, whatever the case, they think you have all the answers, and they think that you are leaps and bounds in life above them, when it's really not the case. We're human just like them. And there's a piece of what they're coming to you for. Obviously, they're looking for the answers, but there's also a lot of power in saying, I don't know. And how I found that out was I tried to BS an answer to somebody, and they said, hey, man, there's power in saying, I don't know. And it stuck with me to this day. And it's been probably close to 20 years at this point. So I would say they're the two biggest things. And then the other things that have just stuck with me is mentors don't have to be people that you know personally. I've found a lot of knowledge and my path of what I want to go on by just finding what I'm interested in, and the people that are or were interested in the same types of things that there's billions and trillions of people like through the years. So it's like, you're not the first person to think of certain things. So seek out those people that think like you, and you can get answers to that way.
So good. So good. And I really appreciate the fact that you highlighted the fact that even as leaders, you said, even as leaders, we don't have to know all the things. You don't have to have the answers all the time. We connect through authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. And vulnerability, as to what you're sharing, Chuck, is that it's truly a strength when it comes to being able to lead and lead effectively. Okay. Last couple of questions for you, Chuck. Number one, where can our audience get this book, 1% Better? Again, if you're listening, I encourage you to go to The Bearded Leader on YouTube, and you can check out this visual of 1% Better, as well as this entire episode on YouTube. So where can we find this book?
Yeah, one, can't thank you enough for grabbing the book. Amazon is the number one spot to grab it. It will be on Audible at this point this coming year. Shout out to my guy John Phelps that works for Tekmetric with me. Yeah. He has the voice of well, I don't want to praise him too much. He'll get too big of a head here, but he has a great voice and is going to do the Audible version of that. But Amazon is where you can grab it. Also, if you go on my Instagram page, which is just 1% Better, and you can also go on onebetter.com, and that's where you can also grab the book. So a few different areas.
Love it. And just so we're all on the same page, better is spelled BTTR. So we're leaving out the E's, correct?
Yeah. No E's. So so keep those vowels out when you're spelling it for the first time ever.
Say no to vowels here. All right.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, Chuck. And lastly, how can our audience get in touch with you? So, and here's why I'm asking this, because throughout this entire episode, I'm thinking, man, like if I'm going to go get a sales job, I know who I want to work for. So how can our audience get in touch with Chuck Connors?
Yeah, there's a few different areas. LinkedIn, I am on Chuck Connors. Just type me in and I should be. I don't think there's many Chuck Connors out there besides my dad at this point. I'm a junior, so he's a senior. But
are you familiar with the rifleman Chuck Connors back in the day?
I am. He is way more badass than I am. I mean, this guy was a professional athlete, actor.
Yeah. He
did everything under the sun. So at least my surrogate father is pretty cool. But yeah, I would say LinkedIn, one. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You could also reach out to me via text. My phone number's on my LinkedIn. I'm very open to anybody reaching out to me. I'm not trying to hide anything from a standpoint of having conversations with people. I absolutely love interacting with others. And even if it's just for advice or if you are looking for an opportunity, would love to point you in the right direction or potentially work together too.
Love it. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this podcast. And if you liked what you heard, and I know you did, please leave a review. The more reviews we have, the more these episodes get pushed out and allows us to reach people and build leaders, which is our mission. Every episode, we look to transform our leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results. So before I sign off, I do want to thank you, Chuck, for being here. So thank you for being here. Hopefully it's not your last time on the Limitless Leadership Podcast.
Oh man, I hope not. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. And thank you for tuning in to the Limitless Leadership Podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.